Hello, and welcome to the Rambling Movie Club, where each episode we try and watch some new movies and hopefully find some good ones. This episode is all about the movie Looper, and I'm joined by James from James and the Frames.
Oh, hello, how's it going? Glad to be on here.
Pretty good, thank you for being on here, and for suggesting this movie.
Well, it's awesome. It's not entirely awesome, but it's a pretty good film to watch, and well, let's get into it.
Okay, why did you suggest this movie?
Well, I suggested it to you because I saw a bunch of sci-fi and action films that you've done on the podcast. I see that you're into action and stuff like that, so I thought it'd be a pretty good time. I saw it a while back, and I thought it was pretty good, so nice recommendation.
Okay, alright, cool. Right. Well, unfortunately, I did not like this movie that much, but you did not know that. But I think I've got a lot of notes and stuff here, and I'm going to try and talk as constructively as I can about it, about like what doesn't work and why it doesn't work. So I think that's the best way, because you can learn as much from a bad movie as you can from a good movie.
Yeah, of course. Totally. I'm all ears.
So if you haven't seen this movie is all about time travel. And basically, it's all about Joseph Gordon-Levitt plays this guy who's like kind of like a hitman in the future, and basically
Looper.
Looper. You're right. Even further in the future, gangsters send people back in time to be killed, and he kills them. And the movie's kind of all about how his future self gets back, and he has to kill his future self, but his future self escapes, and then all sorts of carnage ensues.
Oh goodness, what a dilemma.
I know, right? We've all been there.
We've all our future self escape.
Exactly. And yeah, so if you haven't seen this movie, spoilers ahead.
Yeah, lots of spoilers.
If you want to watch a good time travel movie, I would recommend the movie Frequently Asked Questions About Time Travel. It kind of has a similar idea of people traveling within time or within one location, which I would definitely recommend more than this movie.
Well, yeah, and there's also Back to the Future too, which is just a classic.
Of course,
but, this film, there's a lot of plot holes in this film. There's a lot of holes in time. Wouldn't you agree?
Do you know, I watched this movie yesterday, and I was trying to get my head around the time travel and why it doesn't work, and like trying to understand the rules of the time travel, and I gave myself such a headache trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that I think the director didn't want to focus on time travel as much as normal time travel plots do. He kind of just says like, okay, well, time travel it's too complicated. We're not going to get into the details of it. We're just going to show it to you. And that's fine. But it also generates some very feasibly well-asked questions about it.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll get into more detail about that in a bit. So the movie starts, and we're introduced by Joe into how the world works, and we see how he kills and disposes of bodies. I think they did a really good job of getting Joseph Gordon-Levitt to look like a young Bruce Willis.
Oh yeah, they definitely knocked it out of the park in terms of makeup. I thought it was a little fake at first, but then it completely went away. I had no idea.
Especially the scene later on when there's the bit when he first sees Bruce Willis, and it's like the back and forth, and it's like it literally looks like Bruce Willis twice.
Oh yeah, wow, oh yeah, that was a really good moment. Yeah.
We find out that eventually they all have to kill themselves to close their loops. That's why they're called loopers. And we kind of find out that Joe's friend accidentally lets his future self go. And apparently this is called letting your loop run. And there's a lot of dumb names in this where they're just trying to make it seem cool.
Let your looper go out of the loop. Let him run. Yeah. Well.
Yeah. And this is kind of what I think one of the biggest problems with this movie is they kind of, it's all about trying to seem cool and like not think about anything else. It's like, but you've got to seem cool. It's all that matters.
Yeah, it definitely goes in terms of futuristic stuff. There's a lot of nonsense in there, like the whole levitating quarters thing. It's pretty cool to see once, but then to like have it keep coming back is like some superpower. It's kind of strange, and of course when we get into the more specific superpower-esque part of the film, we'll talk about it more. But that's just one of the details that I thought was a little clunky.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. We then see the henchmen show up to try and catch Joe's friend, and they take Joe to the big boss guy. There's a bit which there's the cool bad guy who keeps twirling the gun, and then he accidentally drops it. Apparently, the actor was actually really good at twirling the gun, and they used the only take where he dropped it.
Really?
Yeah, apparently he got really good at it, but they thought it was funnier to have him drop it.
Yeah, that was definitely a very comedic moment. I enjoyed that throughout. It definitely, however, it did diminish his character just a little bit, like having this klutz who's like constantly failing. But he does have a little bit of a comeback arc, somewhat near the end.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of the point of his character, is that like you underestimate him, so when he does actually finally do it, you're like, oh, okay, like he actually knows what he's doing, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. And Jeff Daniels, I did not know he was in this movie. The big boss guy. He actually does a pretty good job. I mean, he's not half bad. He's actually kind of trying here, so
yeah,
he's pretty good.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like the whole movie kind of focused on like Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Bruce Willis instead, and kind of forgets about him, despite the fact he's like just as big an actor, really. So then Joe gives up his friend, and they use him to catch the future version by scarring him and like cutting off his fingers and stuff. And this is when I started to get really annoyed with the time travel stuff, because it's really dumb. Because the whole thing of like when they like cut on his arm and like, you know, they write like go here in 15 minutes, and it's like, oh my god, all of a sudden I have a scar, and it's like, no, he would have had that since the moment he had the scar. And it's like,
right. It's very strange. I mean, what would be a possible explanation for this would be alternate dimensions and alternate timelines where this person would go through a certain series of events without having it, and then the same physical being etching something onto an arm or a wrist would then show up to the same physical being, but it's very complicated to get into.
This is one of the problems again with the time travel, where they don't define it. And this is a big thing with Bruce Willis's character, is if these characters are coming from a different timeline, where they're changing events and stuff, and they're not the older version in that timeline, then what happens to the younger selves shouldn't affect the older self.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they're technically not the older version of this younger character. They're technically an older version from a different timeline.
Yeah, it's very complicated to get into, and I love how it somehow breaks the fourth wall. And the diner scene between Bruce Willis and Joe Gordon-Levitt, they're saying, just tell me about this. It doesn't matter. Time travel, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to get into the explanation for it.
Yeah.
I thought that was like a cool little fourth wall break. But I will say one thing. The scene where that one guy, that escaped guy, Paul Dano's future self, when he's running away and his body starts like deteriorating away, I thought that was pretty cool. Like the way he was like losing everything and like losing his legs, like pretty cool effects.
Yeah, and this is the thing again, like it makes no sense, or it doesn't make sense. It just gets really confusing with the like trying to think about how it achieved with time travel, but it does look cool.
I mean, it looks cool, but we're not going to give explanations about it.
Yeah, just don't think too hard about it. And then we see future Joe ends up coming back and beats young Joe before he can kill him. This then ends up in old Joe running away, so young Joe has to run away too. Young Joe runs away back to his apartment to try and get all his money and stuff. And the bit where he falls off the ladder is actually quite a cool camera trick, where they like kind of follow his perspective as he hits the ground.
Oh yeah. That's awesome. Oh, I love that. That's really cool. There's a lot of cool shots in this movie. The camera work is actually pretty good. I mean, Rian Johnson, he's worked with Joseph Gordon-Levitt before. He did a film in 2005 called Brick, which is a great indie classic. It has Joseph Gordon-Levitt as a detective. It's basically like Cowboy Bebop, but in high school, and it's very well made and very well shot. So some of those shots carry on over here. But yeah, those were cool camera tricks.
We then see future Joe's timeline and kind of see what happens to him after he killed himself in his timeline, until now, and how he kind of ends up coming back, being sent back in time by gangsters. We see he moved to Shanghai, did a bunch of crime, and then got married. Some bad guys show up to send him back in time, and we kind of see a bit more of how the sending people back in time works. Of like this is like machine that they kind of put you in.
Yeah, I mean, well, okay. The cool thing about the montage stuff, I actually like the montage. The montage is pretty cool. You get to see him like getting old and stuff like that, and then you see Bruce Willis looking like Gary Oldman from The Fifth Element there for a second with the haircut.
Yeah.
But then after that, there is another plot hole. Is that why would you just leave your time machine on constantly with people? If you're gonna get captured, or if you're gonna put someone in, like there's a possibility where that person could like knock everybody out and just go and frump around. So I don't know why they would just leave it on autopilot.
Because then the movie couldn't happen.
Then we wouldn't have the movie. But yeah, that's. I mean, the montage part is cool, and we're probably gonna get into this a little bit more, but Bruce Willis is kind of invincible in this movie. He kind of just plows through everything he comes across, don't you think?
Yeah, I know what you mean. And like later on, the bit you're probably referring to is like when he kills all the bad guys in the young Joe's time.
Yeah, he's just like, I mean, it wouldn't make sense if he's an experienced hitman, and that's probably a feasible opinion that you could put behind it. But like knowing to like duck behind and deflect the young Joseph Gordon-Levitt's bullets with his gold on his back, and then like knocking him out and just like running everywhere, it's just
yeah, exactly. Like, and like you say, like it would only come from like a lifetime of doing this. Like we then see what old Joe did in the present. So this is after he's been sent back in time and he's escaped from young Joe. We see he's starting to get young Joe's memories, and this is again where the time travel stuff gets a bit confusing, because like he's kind of becoming the young Joe, but it like yeah, it's again, the one thing that the old Joe has is his wife, right? If his wife exists in that world, and this is also another thing that he could have done after he killed all those guys inside of the building. He could have just gone to his wife and just left young Joe alone. But of course, we get explained that young Joe is now in cohorts with Emily Blunt's character. Emily Blunt's in this movie. I had no idea she was in this movie. I completely forgot about it. Yeah, no, me too. Like when I watched this, I think this came out in 2012. When I watched this, like I didn't know anything about like the actors really. I like Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I was like, oh, I'll watch that movie. Like, and that was it.
Yeah, so. He's a great actor. He's really good in this movie. Bruce Willis kind of drags through it, and Emily Blunt has like she has an okay Southern accent, but we'll talk about that probably more in a second.
Yeah. Old Joe ends up saving young Joe, and then they meet up in a diner to try and chat. We find out a bit more about old Joe, and that his wife dies, and that he's here to hunt the Rainmaker, this gangster from the future. And this is like we were saying before, like where you can really see them like kind of acting opposite each other, where like you can see how alike they are.
Yeah, it's cool because Joe Gordon-Levitt has like all the mannerisms down of Bruce Willis. He has like the squints and like the lean towards you stuff, and it's pretty cool. But yeah, that sequence is actually pretty fun at the diner. They start shooting at young Joe, and then they start shooting at old Joe after that, because they go after the young guy, and he's like, oh crap, I'm still here, and he has to run back. So
yeah, exactly. And then young Joe kind of joins in and like helps to shoot the old Joe, and you're just like, wait, like which side is he on? The only thing about the shootout, and I feel 1,000 years old for saying it, is the shootout is really loud.
I actually really agree with you. The gunfire is really loud in this movie.
Yeah. And there's another bit later on when he's playing with the kid and they're just chatting and playing with toys, like, and it's quite quiet. And then all of a sudden the siren goes off and you're like, oh my god, what was that? Like,
the sound mixing in this film, it's good at times, but it really gets quiet, and then all of the score elements and the sound effects come out, and it's a lot louder than normal. I've had to find myself turning the volume down after they started talking to listen to the thing, and then turning it back up when they started talking. So
yeah, I definitely agree on that. We then see young Joe goes to Emily Blunt's farm because he knows old Joe is going to go there eventually. Surprisingly, she's the coolest and most badass woman ever, until she trips over running away from a homeless man and has to be saved by young Joe. Yeah,
that was another cool little moment. I actually did not know it was a homeless guy at first, but of course it's revealed that it's a homeless guy. Yeah, that kind of made her character a little weak. I agree with you there. It kind of gave her like a little happy-go-lucky, like, okay, I have a shotgun and I don't really know how to use it or have my footwork ready. Like, what did her shotgun have in it? Did it have bullets or did it have gravel? Because remember, she shoots young Joe in the chest, and it was like, it was gravel or something? It was bullets? I don't know.
She does say, like, I don't care if you get... I think she's something like she says, I don't care if you get shot in the face with gravel or something, so it does kind of make you think, like...
She shot right at him, so either it's loaded with gravel or something, or it's just, I don't know. Because she shot him square in the chest with the shotgun, so... Yeah,
and within, like, an hour he's fine.
Ooh.
Meanwhile, while this is happening, old Joe is hiding in the sewers and trying to keep his memory of his wife kind of alive. Young Joe recovers from his drug addiction and tries chatting to Emily Blunt, but it doesn't go well. And again, this kind of jumping back and forth between old Joe and young Joe. And then old Joe is going around killing kids that he thinks is the Rainmaker, which is pretty messed up.
Yeah, that actually is pretty messed up. But I mean, the first one is pretty weird. Like there's that one kid coming home alone with a key, and like old Joe just appears out of nowhere and just goes to shoot him. But the second one, I almost cheered for the guy with the taser, because he kind of like went into like the room saying, "Rainmaker, it's me," or something like that, and then the guy with the taser kind of just shoots him, and well, they capture old Joe. But that doesn't make any difference whatsoever, because after that, well, you know, he kills everyone.
Whilst old Joe's going around, young Joe kind of gets to know the mum and the kids he's protecting. The mum and the kid are playing, and the kid goes nuts, so she hides in a safe, which is kind of weird when you're watching it for the first time. But we see later on it's because he has superpowers, and this is them trying to set up that twist of him being like super powerful.
Yeah, that was pretty insane. I think that was one of the scenes that I remembered most from watching it originally. I watched it a few years back, and I forgot most of it. But like that scene, the kid actor is actually pretty good in this movie. He's doing a really good job. And I think he's the same kid who was Broom Boy in The Last Jedi.
Oh, really?
Star Wars The Last Jedi. He's the same actor. He looks exactly like him. I don't know if it's the same guy, but...
It wouldn't surprise me, because I know a lot of the directors like kind of have like favorites for like things like that, so maybe.
Yeah, I mean, Rian Johnson has had Joe Gordon-Levitt in like every single one of these movies, like in a voice cameo or something like that, so that's pretty cool. But the kid did a pretty good job. I was actually surprised about it.
Yeah, that's true, and especially because he seems quite young, like...
Yeah, there was a lot of deep lines that he said. Like, I can't remember one off the top of my head, but he was like explaining something like, "She's not my mother. I saw her kill my sister." I'm like, "Whoa, geez, dude, you're like not 10 years old at all. You're like a lot older."
Then we kind of see a mysterious guy shows up, being all mysterious. And again, this is the movie trying to build tension, but I feel like it needs you to be... If you're really invested in the movie and the characters, it's great, but... Like, for me, it doesn't really work.
I would think that he would have been a better side villain or main villain rather than revolver spinning guy. Like, he just gives off that more, like, vibe. Like, maybe he's, like, some silent guy who had a relationship with young Joe, and now they're going against each other. Kind of like Spike Spiegel and, what's the villain of Cowboy Bebop's name? I can't remember. But, like, kind of like that dynamic.
Okay,
I thought that would have been pretty cool.
Yeah, I know what you mean, where it's like, it's just this mysterious guy who we know nothing about, it's trying to be all mysterious, and it's just like, it's not enough, like, you need a bit more there.
Yeah, a little bit more emotional connection, but, I mean, it was a little tense. It was okay. It wasn't that tense, but it was still okay.
Joe and the kid go hide. Oh, one thing I do find quite funny is when they're kind of all sat in the living room, and the kid comes down the stairs and is, like, making a gun motion of, like, you're gonna kill him.
He's like, "No, go upstairs." He just starts walking down the stairs. That part was actually a little tense, but like he was coming down the stairs. I'm like, "Oh my god!" But eventually we find out that the kid is basically like Star Killer. He just like lifts everybody up and just makes some guy explode or something. So that was pretty gnarly.
Yeah. So they go hide. Well, Joe and the kid go hide while the guy leaves. We find out that the guy is actually someone that young Joe used to work with. And then we kind of cut to Emily Blunt laying on the bed looking sexy and thinking about Joe because they want to bang. And that's totally what every woman actually does in real life.
That's completely... Yeah, a complete stranger who's an assassin from the future. You are going to ring your ribbit phone, your hotline, and you're just going to... If you need it, you need it. I mean, I guess in that situation you'd be that tense. But yeah, that happens. It's a little forced, but... Whatever. I mean, Joe Gordon-Levitt has been with a lot of women in movies. He's been with Scarlett Johansson. He's been with Emily Blunt. Dude's got it going for him.
Yeah. They then have a heart-to-heart after they bang, and this is when the tell don't show gets really bad, and it's just boring because it's her telling her backstory of like, oh, I have powers and stuff, and it's like, show this stuff, like, don't just keep telling us that it's happening.
Yeah, I actually did like the little, like a cool idea is stopping the guys from doing the Korra trick because you have your own powers, like, doing that. That's a pretty cool little story, but like the whole other thing about like, oh, I was always trying to get picked up on by these guys. Like, okay, well, we know you're cute, but you don't have to tell us that.
Yeah.
It's like, geez.
Yeah, a little bit too much.
A little bit too much self-importance there. But still, it's whatever. It's just another scene. Like the scene between Bruce Willis and him trying to remember his wife, it was a little unnecessary. Like, he could have been like a minute or a couple minutes shorter. A lot of Bruce Willis scenes, actually, he kind of dragged through this movie. He's still good, but he kind of was just there.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's like almost like he was there for the marketing, almost like to sell this movie.
That's cool.
Then the bad guy ends up coming back to the farm and points a gun at the kid. The kid falls down the stairs and loses it and ends up blowing up the house.
Yeah, that was insane. Oh my god.
Yeah, like you've seen him like do a couple of things and now it's all of a sudden like, yep, he blew up the house, killed the guy.
Jeez, my TV speakers exploded at that part.
The mum is like, oh, he just has superpowers and he needs love, and Joe is like, nah mate, I'm gonna kill him.
Well, I mean, okay, well, I'll talk about it later, like once we talk about the ending, but yeah, I mean, that whole idea of he has to be raised in good for him to be good, we can change the future. I mean, it's something that's been said before. It's another reused thing. It's reused okay, but it's not the best reuse of it.
Yeah, it's just like, it seems like she's almost in denial more than anything. Or just like, he's an innocent kid, he just accidentally kills people sometimes.
It's not her fault. Yeah, it's at this point where I started doubting the kid as a cool mind user and rather a problem. Of course, we'll get into that in a second, but...
At the same time, we see old Joe trying to kill the second kid, and he gets caught instead.
Revolver guy.
Yeah, the revolver guy finally does something good. And then young Joe finds the kid covered in blood and looking pretty shell-shocked. He decides not to kill the kid. Turns out he's actually a good guy.
Yeah, character moment.
Yeah,
pretty good.
I mean, we all have that moment where we want to kill a kid and we can't, so...
Come on, Vince. Always a win. Always a win.
Yeah. And then this is one of the bit we were talking about before, where old Joe gets taken to the bad guy HQ, and he kills a lot of the bad guys.
Yeah, that was like a unstoppable moment. He just kind of just takes a machine gun and just he comes out without a scratch. He doesn't get a bullet in him at all. He's just like, I'm gonna kill you guys. I killed you guys. There, problem solved.
It's good. I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to show him to be like all badass and tough and stuff, and how he can take on like anyone. But I feel like it's done badly, because every scene you see him like killing someone it's always like reverse shot, as in you see him, then you see the bad guys falling over, then it goes back to him, and then it goes back to the bad guys falling over. Like, it's not like like for me, like the perfect one is something like Kingsman, the first one, when you see Harry in the pub and just like where he's like, oh yeah, I'm a tough guy, and you're like, yeah, whatever, and he beats up a room full of people. Like,
yeah, well, it turns out Bruce Willis is actually a Kingsman. Plot twist.
Oh my god, I wish. Kingsman 3 confirmed.
Kingsman 3. Looper.
But yeah, so that's my problem, is like you don't actually see him doing these things. Like, it's all like cutting back and forth, which I think...
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. It's like the lightsaber fight at the end of episode 2 when Anakin and Count Dooku are kind of just waving their lightsabers around, and we see the lights going across their faces, but we don't see the actual clashing of the lightsabers. They're kind of just like warm.
Yeah.
Just the lights are reflecting. But,
yeah, and it's like, yeah, it's great to have these, but you just need to go that step further to like give it that more effect. Like, we then see old Joe shows up at the farm to get the kid, and he confronts young Joe. The last surviving bad guy shows up and distracts young Joe so old Joe can escape and go after the kid.
Yeah, I mean, revolver bad guy kind of goes out like a punk. Poor guy. Yeah. He kind of just like gets on the motorcycle, and just young Joe just kind of just shoots him in the head with a shotgun. Bittersweet end.
Apparently that shotgun has unlimited bullets because he just keeps firing it.
It's also, it's a kind of cool design. It doesn't really look like a shotgun, but it could be. I mean, it's a shotgun obviously, but it's strange. Like, it just fires one big thing or just shatters a bunch. Like, it's a one hit, one kill.
Yeah.
It's kind of strange. Like the looper, closing your loop off, or like the victims who like get teleported to the past. It's just like a one shot kind of deal. He kind of just pumps it and unloads, and that's it. Like, there's no like aftermath. So,
yeah, it's just like, yep, easy. Like,
easy, just business. Just don't even aim for the head, just aim for the stomach, and you'll get him easy.
Yeah, clearly nobody has body armor in this movie.
Clearly nobody. Thanos would be very disappointed.
The mum tries to run old Joe over, but the kid doesn't want to get shot, so he flips the car over with his powers. And again, this is us kind of seeing how powerful he is.
Yeah, it's so really... It's like Oh, that moment was just so... You could have ended it right there. But the kid had to lift the entire truck up. That was kind of annoying. I was like, oh, damn it. Oh, we're going to be that character now. We're going to be the guy who, like, accidentally uses his powers at, like, the wrong moment at the right time. But I guess it does show, like, this kid can be good and he can stop this. But, yeah, I was a little bit like, what?
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's just mental. The mum and the kid run away while old Joe shoots at them. He hits the kid in the cheek, and the kid goes more powerful than before and kind of lifts them all up. Young Joe shows up just as the kid gains control again and kind of lets old Joe and Emily Blunt down. And we go back to old Joe trying to chase them again. Old Joe then has them at gunpoint, and young Joe is far away and only has his shotgun. And this really annoyed me, because they've been saying since the start of, like, you have two guns, a pistol that's long range and a shotgun that's close range. And it's like, oh, he's only got the shotgun. What's he gonna do?
Yeah, that is another plot hole with the ending. But I did kind of like how. Okay, so obviously the ending is that he eventually shoots himself in the chest, and he's like, I decided to stop the loop, or something like that.
Yeah.
It's a cool moment. Like, willing to sacrifice, you finally, the ultimate self-sacrifice, sacrificing yourself so that the future can be all okay. It was a pretty cool moment, being that I see that there's a lot of comparisons. I did some internet research, and there's a lot of comparisons between old Joe and the kid, like the telekinesis kid, compared to Batman and the Joker. Like, the old guy is like the guy who killed his mom, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the old guy, like, has to keep looking for this guy for this kid to kill him. But we see the kid eventually escapes, but the kid's super mad. So he eventually turns into this Rainmaker, and he eventually kills his wife, if you want to look at it that way. But he eventually turns into a bad person because of what old Joe did to his mom. So that's kind of like what was it? First guy who directed the Batman films. I cannot remember.
I can't remember the old one.
What's the guy? Who's the guy who directed? Tim Burton. Tim Burton.
Yeah.
It's like Tim Burton universe Batman, where the Joker kills Batman's parents. Like, it's kind of the same comparison that they did. Like, he can just live the rest of his life, like, wanting revenge and getting super angry. But young Joe stops that. So I think that's a pretty cool comparison.
Yeah, and it's like you're kind of saying as well, like, it's kind of showing, like, how young Joe's changed, because at the start, like, he's this, like, selfish guy who's not interested in anyone else at all. But now he's willing to sacrifice himself to save these two random people who've just been nice to him.
Pretty much. That's a pretty cool character progression. I'll give the script that, even though it does drag in some areas, the ending is pretty good for a sci-fi film.
Well, I mean, I'm kind of split in half, because I'm like, yes, like, that's good. The whole him killing himself, and this is when the time travel gets really messy, because it just, like, I saw that and I was like, no, that's not how it works. Like, you haven't defined your laws of time travel, so it doesn't work this way.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fix all thing. Like, just killing yourself will fix everything. So the effect of people disappearing is pretty cool.
Yeah, where
and
it just
appearing
vanishes, like
yeah. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, the problem with the time travel, and this is where it comes back to how you define your time travel and why you should define it, is like I said, there's two different ways of time travel. There's either old Joe has gone backwards in his own timeline and changed events that would affect him. So young Joe killing himself would affect old Joe, because he's stopping the future there, and old Joe doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
The other one you've got is old Joe is from a different timeline and jumping across. And then what happens there is if young Joe kills himself, it doesn't affect old Joe, because he's not the older version of this young Joe.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I get where you're going. I never thought about it that way.
And this is the problem, because they haven't defined, and they kind of use both different methods in different ways. I'm trying to see if I got it written down anywhere. I don't think I have. Oh yeah, like the one if they're from the same timeline, then that's why old Joe is getting young Joe's memories, and like things like the scarring thing and stuff. Like, that's how that works. Is he's the older version of that character. But,
right, exactly.
But the fact that the idea that he's from a different timeline would be that, like, the events are different. He has different memories from what young Joe has.
Yeah, it's I still think that the theory of alternate dimensions could possibly go into this, and it would make explanations a lot easier, because this guy could just come from another timeline or another thing, but that's not really the case. Ryan Johnson did state, like, oh, maybe there's alternate dimensions, wink wink, but he didn't really specify it.
Yeah, and you can kind of see why, because, like, again, this movie goes for cool, not practical, and so, like, and time travel's hard anyway, and they're just like, no, we'll just kind of ignore all that and then just, like, do some cool stuff.
Yeah, it's really hard to do. The only... What's a good time travel that came out this decade? A good time travel film? You said one in the beginning, but it wasn't...
Frequently Asked Questions About Time Travel is like kind of an indie movie that's quite good.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of some other bigger ones.
Because I had one that came to mind.
What's that?
It was Arrival.
I haven't seen that.
Which is... Okay, well... I recommend it. It's directed by... forgive me if I butcher his name. Denis Villeneuve.
It's the same guy who did the latest Blade Runner movie, right?
Yeah, he did a sci-fi movie with Amy Adams, Jeremy Renner, Lawrence Fishburne. It's a great cast, but it's a great film overall, and there's stuff I'm not going to say anything about. Like, you should go see it. It's pretty good.
Okay. But yeah, that's the thing. Like, time travel in general is really hard to do. Again, like, even when you watch things like Back to the Future, which now is like 30 years old, like, they're really careful about the stuff they do.
Oh, yeah, they're totally... I mean, it's important to have an important framework that people get. And I think that's why audiences are so divided with this movie. Me and you as well, because there's no explanation for it. And the director said that the time travel doesn't really matter because it's focusing on the characters instead of the whole logistics of the time travel. And that's understandable. But that will definitely divide most audiences.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, I'm going to tell you what is a good example of recent-ish time travel is the Futurama episode when they go back in time.
Oh, wait, hold on. Which one is it?
It's the one where Fry becomes his own grandfather.
Oh, that was insane. Poor guy.
If you want to watch recent good time travel, watch that episode of Futurama. I think it's called like Roswell That Ends Well or something, and it's all about they go back in time from the year 3000 and they are the UFO that invades Roswell.
Oh god, yeah, that whole... There was like a couple episodes too where like Fry stops himself from going to the future, and it's like him just like living out his life. I think it's that one. Yeah. But that's a pretty good episode. Futurama's a great show.
Yeah. But yeah, so then the movie ends, and the mum and kid go back to being a happy family, and then it kind of ends. And
I mean, the Rainmaker will not become the Rainmaker. He'll become Luke Skywalker.
Maybe. Who knows?
It'll appear.
Yeah. Is there anything we kind of missed that you want to talk about this movie?
Let's see. I don't think so. Let's see. No, I thought it was it was a pretty good movie overall. I think in a few years' time it'll be looked at as like the THX 1138 of its time or something like that, because THX 1138, like, not a lot of people like it, but some people really do like it because it's a futuristic movie, and well, it's one of George Lucas's first films. But besides that, it has some cool sci-fi elements. Some of them weren't executed well, but some of them were actually pretty cool. But it's a tad bit confusing, but it's well made, and it's a pretty good fun watch. And be sure to regulate your speakers on your TV because they might blow up.
Yeah, that is one thing I'll say. Like, this movie's 8 years old now, and it has aged quite well. Like, there was never a moment when I was like, this looks bad. Like, all the special effects and stuff mostly hold up.
Yeah, especially since, you know, that one opening scene where Joe's walking in to change his silver, like a speeder bike goes by, and it kind of just blends in. It's kind of just like, oh no, you don't have to look at how it's done. It just kind of goes by. So
yeah, whereas like most movies you watch from like that kind of age, you watch them, you're like, you can see the CGI and you're like, that stands out really bad. Right then, I think that's everything about Looper then. thank you, James, for being on this podcast episode with me.
Oh, it was great to be on.
We've had a fun chat about Looper. I'm also doing an episode with him about Jojo Rabbit, so go check out that on his podcast, James and the Frames. Is there anything you want to say? Anything you want to give a shout out to?
No, nothing. Just thank you for having me on, and I hope to do this again sometime in the future.
Oh, maybe. Let's see what happens. So next episode is going to be all about the movie Deadpool, because I feel like in these crazy times we need something a bit lighter and cheerful to kind of keep us positive. If you haven't seen Deadpool, it's a very difficult movie to explain because the main character is crazy. Basically, Deadpool is a Marvel comic that's owned by Fox because he's technically an X-Men character, and basically he's very crazy. He can regenerate, so like if he has like his arm chopped off, he can regrow it, which they use for comic effect all the time. It's a 18 rated movie, so it's very adult orientated. There's lots of sex jokes and like very graphic violence. The fight scenes are really well done. If you've seen Scott Pilgrim, the director of Deadpool is actually the guy who's in charge of the special effects for Scott Pilgrim. But I think it's the perfect movie to watch right now. So yeah, that's what next episode will be all about. Also, don't forget there's now the Patreon if you want to support the podcast. I will include a link in the description so you can support the podcast and get some extra content. But as always, don't feel like you have to. Podcast is 100% free. So thank you for listening, and I will see you next time.